I was just in Starbucks. I went to get a cup of coffee, and there was a couple of gentlemen sitting outside that I know, neighborhood, and one in particular that I absolutely love speaking to. He teaches me so much that I could never possibly get from my home life here. It turns out, he is 1945, manufactured and built, which in Zodiac, like that was there's some of them that are just gems. He is one of those gems. And he is just a treasure trove of pearls and extra special life programming done properly for a perspective if this is the route that was headed. So he was queued up in a life in 1945 when he woke up, where, according to him, from his American standpoint, I'm not confirming or denying that this is actually what happened in Russia for historical accuracy. This is what the Americans are speaking, which goes back to the problem between New York and New Amsterdam and the switcheroo that Elizabeth did. She was to work took us off and earn back royal status and partnership by coming into New York, being Miss Mayhem. Actually, she was born in Mayfair, but I used to call her as a goddess. I used to say she's mayhem. She's mayhem, and that's why mayhem has a legal aspect to it. There's a severity to it. If you look it up on Google, I put it up before. We already had this worked out before. There's a very serious legal consequence to causing mayhem. She's in Buckingham. They have power of ape world purse money seat in Buckingham. Should she buck the system where she only takes from it and causes other things and just sits back and says, well, how do I know? Because we know. And we told you and your people. So she was supposed to go, once New York was New York, she was supposed to go there. That was her route. She was supposed to set up, via her family left in the United Kingdom of Sea of Tranquility lands, a new ministry in New York, via the name change, since she was born previous to my own arrival as Goddess Nyx. That was her requirement as being human and thinking she was a part of a larger family that would take care of her for whatever. She denied Goddess Nyx. She denied God Zeus under the Mount Olympus family inner sanctum agreements. She never, and her family, never made good on their partnership with New York being changed over to their namesake. We would have left it with Luxembourg and New Amsterdam, and we would have been fine under Bavaria and Belarus and what I had set up in my kingdoms and empire that time, in order to satisfy the requirements of my upcoming arrival within 2 generations as my full-time. The immortal will be full-time for a stretch to help the rest of you out. But that never happened because she stayed in Buckingham Palace, Calious. She never left. She never came to New York. She never established a department of ministry with London anywhere in New York. There's no office. There's no setup. There's no anything for anything royal. There's no heritage office like you have in London. You walk in, you find out who your relatives are, where your place in the world is. That's what London has. New York has absolutely nothing. There's no office you walk into and you say, okay, well, here's my heritage. Please tell me where I need to report to. They never came to New York, so they never did these things for the Tsar and for the Tsarina, the Tsar, for Caesar. They never did any of these things in New York. So now, 1978, and she was born 1900s, if you don't install these things properly in the Empire State, being capital Albany of the Department of State of New York, and one of the 50 postage stamps of the United States of America, how do you think that the federal governance is going to work with the royal partnerships when you don't lay the foundation properly? I'm just curious. Because in 2020, it is totally obvious that you have let all of your responsibilities lack, and you never did anything that you were required to do under the royal agreement, the royal partnership, the land agreements, and the corporation whatever. Because at that point, there was no commercial corporations. More dead entities wound up being created privately to circumvent the problems with the lack of cleanliness. I had this conversation. So here's the thing. So the 1945 father, I wish I had. He's a wonderful local gentleman who's very knowledgeable. He said that I asked him what, because I heard them talking about Stalin. So I said, and there was somebody from Maltese who was avidly fighting on behalf of Russia, which I had never heard anybody even speak of Russia, nor know their history. So I was quick to sit down, but then when I sat down, then like it stopped. So, but it was a mix between the German history and the Russian history, but I could only hear catchphrases. I didn't hear the gist of it. Being GIST or the JIST on the whatever's working in science on neural network. So where the condors fly Hebrew. Okay, so that's what I used to tell the inner office. Anyway, right, you gotta be immortal to get that one. Okay, that's when things worked. On setting up my trip back to humanity, that's going to fucking seriously wrong. Okay, so according to Harold, he said that in the U.S. they learned on their neural network of 50 postage stamps that don't work. He learned that he woke up hearing that, and his association was that Russia had in the 1800s a Karl Marx. So that would be I always spell it with a C, C-A-R-L, but that's for my extra special dual relationship with everybody, for both hemispheres, as Caesar with A-E, as I was born on the American side, but I equally share both responsibilities with Hitler. So he had over here, they were saying or chirping, parroting, I say, P-A-R-R-O-T-I-N-G, like an African gray, parrots, like it can repeat, right. So the thing is that they were saying that Karl Marx was 1880s, 1890s, some industrial revolution, war of some sort. He apparently was promoting socialism. But then he said that socialism was a modificaton. Well, he said modification, but I know it's spelled the mode. If the caton, then something else transpires in the how does the cascading effects work, and how does the thought patterns and the mental process work in how do we interact with the outer science in phrenic and the nerves of the pharaohs. And me coming into a Farrah Fawcett era of everybody left the faucet on and they forgot to turn it off, and now the waters are brackish and muddy and I don't know what to do with the adults. I don't. How to get the fuck out of this? I don't know. None of the adults did anything that I needed. They just left the hose on for themselves and then were like, oh, well, the goddess Nyx, she'll just turn it off when she gets here. How, when you put it on, stole drinking water out of it for 2 generations, left it on expecting me to turn it back off, but then didn't install any of the proper things in the Empire State in New York that if that's where I was going to be held captive, at least you'd have the proper offices and somebody who could speak to me to tell me where to go. But none of that was installed. So who are these people who left the hose on, the faucet on? Right. Those are very serious czar charges against all area idiocy throughout globalization and global stations. You all have global stations that I rely on your management skills. Trapping me here under Elizabeth's issue and none of my other governances or counts or dukes or sirs or anything that is important that we rely on in kingdom level, when they all beseech me and fail me, how do you expect me to? I don't have the same. You have contacts in the US. I don't have European contacts. There's nobody for me to call. I don't speak Cyrillic. I don't speak Russian. I don't speak Romanian. I don't speak any of them. I don't even speak Italian fluently. My dexterity to parrot back always works. Well, you're supposed to always work, but I don't have fluidity in the verbal skills while I'm in a diagnostics mode waiting for help. I didn't learn French fluently, and I did not learn Italian fluently because I was born into a diagnostics mode where the paired linguistics was Caton emergency services. When I speak, it goes through like echo chamber shockwaves on the cascading effects. So, and that's one of those superhuman functions of extra special, extra spatial in phonics. So anyway, so Harold said, so first of all, I thought that the humans were taught that it was communicaton was first. The communication and communism came first, and that then there was a modificaton, being modification, into socialism, which is where you turn it just a little bit and you explain it a little differently and then see how that evolves and see if that campaign like catches on. Right, so that's how I thought that was supposed to work, but he's telling me that Karl Marx came first in 1890s with socialism, and then it was modificatoned into communism. But communism was the broad scale, and it needed to be fine, like on a micro scale. It works in like a HOA or like a homeowners association of smaller communities of homogeneous. It's when you go to the larger scales, the bigger the district, the further you go out in macro, then the more the seams are hard, especially if the roots don't take on the smaller communities. For some reason in America, they wrote the laws, so this is how stupid they are. They wrote the laws to be equal for all colors. So they're literally forcing humans, you're not allowed to have homogeneous communities at all. It's against the law in America. When did that happen? You're not allowed, it was actually the complete opposite. You were not allowed to have mixed communities, is how America was funded and set up originally. When did stupid humans invert it, invite all of the children that we didn't want you to bring on, as then the parents of the royalties elsewhere have to afford these things that you now invited over like a house party, a teenage house party, like, come on, my parents aren't home, we'll just drink until we fall over, come on, everybody's invited. And then none of you have any good ideas of how to clean out the house when the house guests don't want to leave and they don't want to contribute. And now they're telling you, you can't raise your family the way that you need to raise them. Anybody figure out how you're going to get around that on shirking responsibility?